Hello and welcome to this training video on interim reviews, annual assessments, and follow-ups. When things change, as they normally do, we perform these reviews in Service Point to keep track of data over time. That extra dimension of change over time is invaluable. It helps us develop a clear picture of the client's unique situation and delivers important feedback for all levels of support, from case managers to funders. In this video, we're going to focus on how these occurrence points, as HUD describes them, fit within the general entry-exit workflow. This includes when to do updates, as well as the new element as of October 2017, the housing move-in date. Let's dive in. The entry-exit workflow provides a minimum of 2 snapshots of data, one at entry and one at exit. Considering that some programs may continue with the same client for years, a lot can happen in the time between. Here are a few examples of major events or occurrences that may trigger an additional snapshot: a transition from unhoused to housed, changes to income or household composition, and when measuring program performance. Extra snapshots help complete the story. Here is a high-level view of the entry-exit workflow. Time travels to the right, represented by the blue line. The period between entry and exit is the interim, where we perform interim reviews. This includes updates and annual assessments. Updates, the orange dots, can be performed anytime, while annual assessments, the green dot, are completed annually based on the head of household's entry date. After the client exits, there can be any number of follow-ups to check on how the client is doing after completing the program. Before we jump into the action in Service Point, for anyone who would like some extra practice or wants to see the full view of the screens at your agency, we highly recommend you open the training site in a new tab and try things out. All right, looking at Service Point, when you log in, your first screen is the Summary tab. Interims and follow-ups live in the Entry-Exit tab, pictured here. Some values tend to stay constant. Once you have the correct information, static values like a person's name, date of birth, generally don't need updating. On the other hand, dynamic values change frequently, like income amounts and sources of health insurance. You can probably think of some other examples as well. Interims help us capture the changes in dynamic values to tell the complete story. Since the entry is our baseline, an accurate value at entry is essential. Before the move, consider, is this a correction or an update? And go to the right place to make your change. Make corrections at entry or at the earliest instant of the error. This is most efficient because the corrected value will then flow through to subsequent reviews. Data changes that happen anytime after entry and before exit are recorded through updates. This slide shows a few example occurrences, which we'll cover in more detail shortly. To start your update, go to the Entry-Exit tab. Click on the icon under Interims and click Add Interim Review. Starting from the top, select the people to include in the update. Even if the data change only applies to one person, we will generally select all the household members who are actively in the program. For interim review type, select Update. Enter the review date, which can be the date the review was performed or the date the update becomes active. Save and continue to go to the assessment. This is where we will update the information in our snapshot. In this snapshot, let's see what needs updating. It could be, for instance, the housing move-in date. The housing move-in date is a key element that is filled in when a client moves into housing. The record of change over time between unhoused and housed is very helpful for reporting. In Service Point, update the housing move-in date for the head of household. Some communities may also record this value for other members as well because of its significance. Be sure to follow your agency's process. When checking for any other updates, a quick way to move between household members is to click on the profiles in the left column. It automatically saves your changes when you switch to another person's assessment. When you're done, click Save and Exit. Nice work! A completed update should look similar to this. If you need to go back and edit something, click the pencil on the left. The client count on the right displays the number of people associated with the review. In the Entry/Exit tab, you'll now see a little number that shows how many interims were done for that entry. In another snapshot, what if the current head of household left the household? In this case, we will use an update to designate a new head of household and update the relationship to head of household value for all other members. A single individual is by default the head of household. Go through the sections top to bottom. Check the people to include. If needed, uncheck anyone who has left the program. Select the type as Update and enter the review date of when the head of household changed. When you're finished your update, the client count should match the number of stayers. As a helpful note, it is okay if the designated head of household in an entry group does not match the head of household in the Household tab. We finished covering 2 examples of updates. Moving along, we've now reached the 1-year mark and it's time for an annual assessment. To start, add a new interim review. After verifying that all stayers in the household are checked, select Annual Assessment as the type. The annual assessment can be performed anytime within 30 days of the head of household's entry anniversary date. It is recommended that you set the review date in Service Point to match the anniversary date. When you click Save and Continue, if you see this message, double-check the people to make sure you've unchecked anyone who's exited the program. By this time, there are probably many items that need updating for people who have stayed in the program for 1 year or longer. For example, the 4 HUD verification subassessments, especially monthly income. Managing subassessments can be tricky. If you'd like a refresher, we have a great illustrative how-to video on the HUD verifications. After you complete the annual assessment, you should see a new row with the annual assessment date and type in the list of interims. Does everything look good? All right. On to the last part, follow-ups. Interim reviews happen between the entry and exit. Follow-ups are snapshots done after the exit. The date and frequency are based on your funder requirements and vary from program to program. Follow-ups are often used to check in with the client to find out if they're still housed. To record a follow-up, the client must first have exited from the program. To start, click the follow-up icon and click Add Follow-up Review. The steps are quite similar to interims, except now we want to check all the people who exited. There are several review types to choose from. A 6-month follow-up is pretty common, which is what OHCS uses. It's a good idea to check with your agency admin for the appropriate follow-up schedule for your program. Pay attention to the type and the date, because Service Point will not flag a discrepancy. Save and continue to get to the assessment questions. Answer the follow-up questions required for the program for all applicable clients, and save and exit. Awesome job! You completed the follow-up. Here's how it should look for an example 6-month review. In the Entry/Exit tab, you should also see the number for how many follow-ups were completed. And that brings us to the end of this training. As always, we like to finish up with a few key takeaways. Interim reviews and follow-ups are used to update data with snapshots to show changes since entry and exit. Remember to keep the info current and accurate, and review dynamic values regularly, especially for reporting purposes. When doing annual assessments, set the review date to the anniversary of the head of household's entry date. You can perform the actual review anytime within plus or minus 30 days of that date. And lastly, follow-up schedules may vary between programs. Check with your agency admin for full details. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. We hope you found it useful and informative. If you have any questions, please direct them to your local administrator. We look forward to seeing your amazing interim reviews and follow-ups.